Democrats are having great fundraising totals. So when I look at the House and I look at the Senate, what I see is a lot of alarm bells for Republicans.
The polls are shifting. The map is changing. The fight for Congress is on. This is the battlefield.
The Democrat Socialists just handed the Republicans some great attack ads. I realize that they're a small minority of what Democrats are, but the things they are saying are so radical that in those tight races, they're going to try to nationalize those issues. We're going to run ads talking about defunding ICE, and we're going to put them right up against problems with immigrants who have killed other Americans or other crimes they've committed, and it's going to make it a tight squeeze in those races. And the problem is Democrat socialists keep winning enough races that they're not just some fringe group. They have a big enough voice that it's going to be important.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that it really takes only one, right? You only need one poster child in order to have something to run on. And so you'd rather not run against Sherrod Brown in Ohio. You'd rather run against Daria Lisa Chevalier or Abdul Al-Sayed. And so if you're really running against Sherrod Brown, you're still going to run an ad about some recognizable nutty DSA figure. Now, do Democrats have an opening to do the same thing? This past week, the counting finished in Colorado, and Victor Marx is going to be the Republican nominee for Colorado governor. He is a guy who says he killed a man when he was 7 and he can exorcise demons from people.
The reality is socialist carries a different meaning. This guy who is absolutely crazy, although we probably do need to exercise some people in the Senate.
Can you imagine if he was like over Trump? The power of Christ compels you. Out, foul demon, out.
Oh, that would be entertaining. And the media, the problem Democrats have is socialist carries a weight and a meaning and a defined conversation. And with DSA putting out their platform and winning enough seats, it becomes a conversation where we start to say, that's what you get with Democrats. It's the socialists around every corner, under every bed. And that creates a problem in some of the tough races.
Great. Running against socialists under every rock, around every corner. Donald Trump, make America 1954 again.
The death of Lindsey Graham has set up a feeding frenzy in South Carolina right now. Now, the Republican filing window doesn't open until noon on July 21st and closes on noon on July 28th. The GOP special primary is August 11th with an August 25 runoff. Now, the Democrat candidate's strong. When she was running against Lindsey Graham, she had zero chance of winning that race. Now, this primary could get ugly. I think there are right now about 8 candidates that are sitting in there who want to run for this seat. Russell Fry has the support inside Trump's orbit, while Nancy Mace is viewed as unacceptable by parts of the Trump operation. If Nancy Mace becomes the Republican nominee, it makes this Senate race highly competitive.
All right, let's do your third one.
Third one, fundraising reports come out. When you look at some of the big Senate races, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas, the Democrats have all raised significantly more money. In Georgia, the Democrat raised $14 million compared to the Republicans' $570,000. In North Carolina, Cooper raised 8.1 to Whatley's 1.8. In Ohio, Brown has 12.5 to the Republicans' 4.1. And in Texas, this just scares the hell out of me. Tallarico raised $26 million compared to Paxton's $1.6 million. And in a lot of these, the Democrats are just dwarfing Republicans. We talked a couple weeks ago about how the Supreme Court allows parties to coordinate better. This is why we wanted it, because we're getting our butt kicked out there.
We've covered the fact that it's not necessarily the raw dollars, because Republicans are ahead in terms of their party dollars, their party committee dollars. Democrats are seemingly ahead in a lot of key races when it comes to their candidate dollars. Now, under the Supreme Court ruling, because both candidates and parties get the same lowest available ad rates on television, there's an equivalence there. So it's not the total dollars. You're watching this because it's really a proxy for enthusiasm, engagement, and momentum.
In Texas alone, when you look at Tallarico and how much money he's raised compared to Paxton, that should send alarm bells across the country that Texas is more in play than we think it is. But it's also just not in the Senate. You can look at some of the House races that Democrats are targeting, like Arizona 6, Iowa 1, PA 7 and 10, Virginia 2, where the Democrats are having great fundraising totals. So when I look at the House and I look at the Senate, what I see is a lot of alarm bells for Republicans.
So this week, the structural indicators that we always look at, presidential approval and economic sentiment and the generic ballot, were mostly fairly even. I do want to note the fact that, as we talked about last week, Donald Trump's net approval among independents continues its drip, drip, drip slide downward. And that's incredibly significant when you talk about swing voters and also enthusiasm. When you look at the race by race ratings, again, pretty stable in the House and the Senate and in prediction markets. But there was a major ratings change from the race analyst Charlie Cook when it came to governor's races this week. And two of them are especially significant, Ohio and Arizona, both moving into toss-up or lean Democratic territory. These are significant states, the 7th largest and 14th largest states by population in the U.S., respectively. And it shows some real momentum for Democrats when it comes to these ultra-powerful and ultra-important races. There is one number, though, that I want to pick out, and I'm going to go back to the earlier graphic here and take a look at the number that caught my eye. Pew Research released this week its polling showing how voters identify themselves in terms of their party affiliation. Are they willing to say to a pollster, I'm a Democrat, or I lean toward the Democrats, versus Republican, or lean toward the Republicans? What we saw this week was a gap opening up of about 4 percentage points in Democrats' favor. That's interesting because the way people identify with parties isn't fixed. Sure, there's a base for each party that is pretty fixed, people who are ride or die for their party. But a lot of voters float above that and they shift. Their perception of themselves changes with their feeling about the political climate. And we found that this number, how people identify themselves in terms of their party, is very predictive of their political behavior, how they're going to ultimately vote. And so now we're seeing a party affiliation environment that's a lot more like 2020. The other thing that's underneath this number is that party affiliation among voters without a college education has really rebounded in Democrats' direction. Just a year ago, Republicans had a 10-point advantage among voters who had never gone to college. Now it's only a 2-point advantage. In 2020, Democrats had a 2-point advantage. So again, in this key segment of voters, we're seeing a rebound in Democrats' favor and an environment that's starting to look a lot more like 2020 when they had a very strong election.
That is huge from Republicans. Those are those politically homeless. Those are swing voters. You've gone through all this stuff, so not everybody has to. What's your bottom line on all this?
My verdict for the week is it's a very slight win for Democrats. I want to acknowledge that there are some things that have moved in Republicans' favor. Look, inflation coming down a little bit, that's a good thing. It still means prices are rising, but if they're not rising as fast and if wages are beginning to catch up, voters could start to feel a little bit better. Those ratings changes among governors, that's an important indicator. If Democrats can win the governor's race in Ohio and Arizona, in Arizona, Governor Hobbs has vetoed a record number of bills from the right-wing Republican legislature. It just goes to show how much that affects the balance of power in America. And most Americans' everyday lives are just as affected by what's happening in their states as by what's happening at the federal level. I want to keep watching what we continue to learn as these FEC reports come in. And of course, I want to see what happens with Trump's speech tonight and just how far he'll go. But to me, this week was a very slight lean toward the Democrats.